Welcome back to Open Line. We are talking about the future of Nashville. We have with us the two candidates for Vice Mayor. Acting Vice Mayor Sheri Weiner, Councilman at Large Jim Shulman. The election is on September 6th. Early voting is already underway. We're going to be just talking about several big issues, and the one that people keep asking me about. How can this city be in the financial shape it's in when it's booming the way it has been booming? I'm sure you get this question all the time, and I guess what can we do to make it better? So we've just reneged on a promise to Metro employees to give them a pay raise. I'm doing stories about cuts to the fire department and public safety. How did we get here, and what can we do to change what is happening? And I'll start with Jim and then go to Sheri.
Well, I said this before, but we have lots of bills that come before us all the time. Zoning matters, and if you look at our calendars for the last couple meetings, we stayed there until 2 o'clock in the morning, and then until midnight, and then we had a special hearing the other night. We were there until 10:30. So we have lots of stuff going on. But the budget is the most important thing that we do. And typically, in the 11 years I've been on the council, we get the budget typically at the end of April, beginning of May, and then we start our review. We can't do that anymore. We simply cannot afford to do that anymore. So, I mean, I would really encourage all of us to start working on the budget right now. And that is, when I say right now, we have to understand what happened before. How did we get in this situation? And people talk about, you know, the property reappraisals. We talk about the school board missing on estimates. We talk about use of one-time revenues that were used for recurring expenditures. That's a big no. That is not how we do it. So what happened? How did we get into this situation? Was there too much money being given away to programs? We got the budget this time in May. We had to move quickly, and so there wasn't a lot of time to go back, so we had to do as much understanding as we could, and then we had to get a budget passed. We have to understand what happened, and then we have to start working right now to try to figure out why that happened and where we go forward. And for a city that is booming, we have all this stuff going on. We need to go back and figure out exactly how this happened and why we had to wait until, you know, April or May to try to figure this thing out. I know there were a lot of things going on, but we really were working very, very quickly to try to figure out how to deal with this.
Which is often what you see with the council. They're given something, they're not given a lot of time to digest it. But I want to ask, all right, the same, how did we get here, and what can we do to get out of this mess, budget-wise?
So several things come to mind. First of all, I'll roll the clock back a little bit. A couple of years ago, there were several of us in the council who said, we're looking at all of these budgets at the same time in a compressed time frame to include the operating budget and the capital spending plan. And I'm going to forget the name of it because I'm sitting here with you. The capital improvements budget, sorry about that.
CIB.
And the CIB is essentially a wish list. And the capital spending plan is the money that we use for our big projects. And so we were looking at all of that all at the same time. And that's a lot of information to have to digest with no financial analyst on board in the council office, and we're part-time. And so one of the first things that we did, Councilman Cooper and I did it 2 years ago, is we said, we've got to kick the CIB and we've got to kick the capital spending plan out of this package of time. So the CIB actually is something that we look at starting in December within the council, and we're able to put that together early on. Then as far as the capital spending plan, we were able to move that into the fall. So we haven't even looked at this year's capital spending plan. Having said that, it's a really good thing because we got hit and essentially blindsided with the bad budget that we got this year, and having an issue where we didn't have the property tax revenue that we had anticipated, even in the midst of having a surplus in terms of community funds that we were getting from sales tax revenue, for example, and I mean the run that the Predators had, etc. And so what we need to do is we need to look at how we vet these proposals. We need to look at the timeline in which we get the materials, and we need to look at how within the council body we have the time set aside and the materials appropriately given to us so that we can take the deep dive that we need to take independent of the administration.
Your both sounds like you're talking about moving up the budget process.
Absolutely.
How do you do that? Is that the mayor? Does not the mayor have to come up with the budget? And could you all come up with a budget then? I mean, how do you move it up? And I have thought part of that is kind of a result of a strong mayor and a weaker council. I mean, there's so many council members, they're 40, and it's just tough for them to read through all of this stuff, and it's a very compressed time frame. So are you both saying, it sounds like, give the council more time to look over this budget and find this stuff out? How do you actually do that?
We can do that through resolution. We can do that through agreement with the administration and put it in writing in the form of resolution. We can stipulate the timeline that we would like to see things happen. We need to know what our revenues are when we do the budget. And some of those year-end revenues we don't even know until after we've already voted on a budget. So we need to get real-time information insofar as possible annually. We need to be on top of our fiscal health annually. Every business that we work with, every business that I work with, gives me a fiscal accountability report quarterly, and we review our numbers monthly. We should do the same thing. We need to be on top of these things.
Is that what you're saying, we should move it up?
Well, yeah, I'm saying that every month we should be informing the council and the public. How are we doing? Are we on target? So everything is estimated. I mean, you're thinking that revenues are going to come in, you're taking a guess at, but I mean, things change. You know, it's been a long time. We've had, you know, economic growth in this country for a long time. We always need to worry that there could be a downturn. It's just how this works in our economy. It goes up and then goes down. So we always have to be ready for the next cycle. So right now, I would encourage us to every month pay attention right now. So the mayor's not going to give us a budget until May of next year, but we need to be functioning right now, understanding what we just went through and then where we go for the rest of the year, so that we know if revenues are not hitting our estimates, then we may have more trouble in the future, and we need to understand why. The other thing, what I would say, is that not only do we have to worry about this year, but we also have to worry about next year and the year after that and the year after that. We have to watch future growth. So let me give you an example of how that works. Mayor Berry, when she came to us and said we want to give employees a pay raise, it's like, yeah, that's great. 2% last year, 3% this year, 3% next year. Make sure the money is in the budget. Do not just, we had to pay attention to it. It's our responsibility, just like the mayor's. You know, when we promise something, we better make sure the money is there. That's just a kind of a standard of budgeting. And so when the budget got presented to us, or when we started looking at it this year, it wasn't there. The revenues weren't there. And
that's made a lot of people angry. Metro employees.
I understand.
And you both voted against raising property taxes. You both voted against that. What I'm hearing is next year is going to be equally as hard, maybe even harder. Where do you stand on property taxes next year? Are we going to have to raise property taxes to get out of the mess, the budget mess we're in? And I'll start with you.
We need to start looking now. We need to evaluate where we are now, where our revenues are going to be coming from, and we need to do better jobs of evaluating and projecting what it's going to look like next year. Because the last thing that we need to do is at the 11th hour say, uh-oh, we don't have enough money again. That's not the way you do business.
Would you raise property taxes next year? Would you rule it out?
I'm not going to rule anything out. I don't want to raise property taxes. I feel like we need to diversify our revenue portfolio so that we have money coming in from a variety of sources. We have a lot of needs in the city. There's a lot of stuff that we've got to get done, and it costs a lot of money to get those things done. For us to rely solely or so heavily on property tax revenue isn't fair, and it's not what people want. So it's up to us to find ways to diversify that revenue stream so that we get money from a variety of sources.
What do you think is coming next year? Are we going to have to raise property taxes? Would you rule out raising property taxes?
Again, I think Sheri's right. You never rule out anything. That's, I know people sign tax pledges and things, but you know, that's always difficult, and you never want to rule out anything. But I think we have to spend some time looking at our budget right now. I mean, do we need to make some cuts? Is there too much stuff in the budget? I mean, obviously we've been through some peak times. We were pulling in lots of new additional revenues. Did we overspend? And we spent a lot of time this last, during the budget cycle this last time, trying to figure out if we could make some cuts to the budget. We weren't very successful with that. I think before you even look at any additional revenues in terms of a property tax, I think we have to spend time trying to figure out whether we need to cut, and we also have to look at the future, figure out where we're headed. We have to come up with a balanced budget, but I think it's the council's responsibility to look very closely at all those budgets that are coming in from the different departments. Councilman Cooper, John Cooper, has proposed a Blue Ribbon Commission to look at new innovative ideas and to really challenge what we've got. I think we need to do that. So you never rule anything out, but we have to take a serious look at what we've done over the last couple of years and figure out whether we can make some cuts in that budget.
It's surprising, though, because we're a county that's growing, so it's counterintuitive to cut services theoretically. Can you identify some specific things that you think we could cut? Because again, you talk to Metro employees, they're busier than ever as we're booming, growing leaps and bounds. How can we be cutting? And so I'll ask you both that, then we're going to go to break. Then I'm going to take calls, I promise. But what are there some specific things you feel like we can cut? And I'll start with you, then Sheri.
Okay, so the whole purpose, I think, of the Blue Ribbon Commission is to go back and take a look. So Atlanta did this exact same thing, and they started trying to weigh, you know, what the objectives of a particular department were as compared to how many people were on staff. And I'm not saying that we overdo it, because we do need the services. But the question is, what is all in that budget? And again, did we give too much away in terms of corporate, you know, property tax breaks and other things like that? I think we have to take a step back and take a look. What I would say, what I was concerned about last time when this property tax increase came up was, first of all, a lot of people didn't know it because it was not a reassessment year, not a reappraisal year, so people didn't know we were even thinking about it. We had hit particular areas of town pretty hard during the reappraisal. Some people did have their taxes go up, and we were getting ready to take a look at readjusting it and increasing their taxes again, and they didn't even know we were thinking about it. We had to, and this was all done quickly. I mean, it wasn't, we were just having to move quickly. We should have had more regional meetings trying to figure out and let people know what was going on. And three, I was concerned that you don't put the burden, because it was our responsibility. We passed these budgets. You don't put the burden on the taxpayers by increasing the tax, by increasing their taxes, until we take a serious look and figure out if there are places to cut. So we spent some time working on it. We didn't get very far. We didn't have a lot of time.
What do you think? Are there places to cut? And why? I guess you were opposed at that time to the property tax increase. You can explain why. But are there places you could identify to cut right now?
So yes, I was opposed to it for a lot of the same reasons that Jim shared. As far as finding places to cut, I think you have to look at efficiency of government. Where do we have duplications? Where can we collaborate across departments to cut some of the expenses? I think that we need to be mindful of where we can cut fat and spending in every department at every level.
All right, we're going to take a break. Then I'm going to start taking calls. So if you're on the line, hold on, take a break, be back right after this.